Welcome to Rosslair Security. My name is David Bramlett. I am the Technical Support Manager for Rosslair Security, US and Canada. Today we're going to talk about how to create networks and find panels for AxtraxNG software. To start with, we need to open up our Axtrax client. We'll go into the administrator, and our password is lowercase admin, A-D-M-I-N. Once our software opens up, there's a couple of things that we just want to double check and correct. As you'll see here, our date is incorrect. We need to set this to US English. We go to Tools, Options, and we change it from English to English USA. Okay. Now we want to go under AC Networks. We want to insert a new network, and we hit the plus sign. We have three different ways we can connect to a network. We can connect via serial, TCP/IP, or modem. In this demo, we're going to be connecting TCP/IP. We'll select it. We'll hit our configuration. Our software goes out and looks for the MAC address on the panel. The MAC address is located on the actual board itself. The top side, a white sticker with our MAC address on it. Mine happens to be the OC7D. These are all our lab switches that we have here, so that's why you see so many. Most often you will only see the one. When we are setting up our panel, we should make sure that we set our dip switches on the top right hand side for the speed. In most cases, you want to set your serial speed at either 9600 or 57.6. Mine, just for demo purposes, is set at 57.6. Most often you would want to set it at 9600, and that would be dip switches 1 and 2 in the down position. We can leave our port at 1000. We always want to verify that if we are using an IP board, that we set our gateway type to the MDIP32, or if we are using an MDN32 converter, we would change it to that. We always want to make sure that we go to our command prompt and we do an IP config, IPCONFIG, to verify what IPv4 or 6 address we are on. You'll see in this case that I am on 192.168.1, and that is the case that you'll find frequently. So you always want to make sure that you match your gateway to the PC exactly, your subnet to the PC exactly. The first three entries of your IP will be the same, and in our particular case, it has signed the IP address 227. We would just leave it in that. We hit apply to process this to the panel to give it its IP address. And if you do have multiple entries of MAC address, you always just want to double check. Our software will always come back and assign the top entry. In our particular case, mine was the OC7D. We want to highlight it, tell it OK. Here is where I can change my name of my network, something that's up to you whether you want to change it or not. I most often do so I can more easily track it. Then I can tell it OK. You'll see that my status went from disabled to OK, saying that I am connected on my test. Second thing that we need to do after we have found our network is we need to find the panel, which is actually the IP address. So we want to go under Table View. We want to go to the Find Panels icon, click on Find Panels, select Find Panels at the bottom of the screen. Our software will go out and take a look, and it will find the panel or the multiple panels that you have installed. You want to put a check mark to the left, hit add panels. Now if I had more than one, I would have had panel, network 1, panel 2, panel 3. They would have all came into my window. I hit add panels, and my panel now has been added. I have a new panel called network 1, panel 1, and you'll see right now that I have a download count. What the software is doing at this point in time, it is connecting to this panel via the software. It's initializing it, and what it will do is it'll set at this initialization for about 30 to 60 seconds, and then it will download the configuration that I have built to the panel. Once it's hit 0, then my panel is updated and I am connected. Always when you do a new install, you want to do a firmware update. To do a firmware update on our panel, you want to highlight the panel. You want to go under table view to your icons. Your last icon, the wreath, is a firmware update. Click on firmware update. You will see that the software automatically assigns the type of panel, which would be the correct firmware, and you would tell it OK. In our case, since mine is a test, it's already updated, but we're going to update it anyhow. Tell it OK again, and you will see a download count start at approximately 461. At this point in time, it's downloading the firmware into the panel. It'll go down to a 0, it'll pop back up to a 3, and it is reconnecting to the panel. It takes exactly 2 minutes for it to reconnect to the panel, and then you will see the download count increase to about a 20 and go back down to 0. At that point in time, it is downloading the configuration that we have built into the panel. One thing on the firmware for our software, as you saw, the software automatically assigns the firmware. When we load the software onto the PC, the software automatically downloads the firmware, the correct firmware for all of our different panels onto the hard drive. So it automatically has it there. You don't have to connect, you don't have to go look, and there's no firmware upgrade without a software upgrade on our AxtraxNG software. So at this point you'll see that we're sitting here at a 3, and that is the 2-minute connection of the client to the server. Once that ends, we'll do our up count and download our configuration. A couple of things just to point out while we're doing this, because we have a couple of minutes here, is always remember to do your backups. To do a backup, you go to Tools, Database, and you can do a backup now, or you can do an export configuration and events. Both are the same exactly. You'll want to hit browse and put it to wherever you want it to go. I always put my initial on my desktop so that I'll know where it is. You tell it OK, and it starts the backup. The backup will close our software. You'll get an icon come up. It'll tell you that the software is closing. You just need to tell it OK. It'll take approximately 30 seconds, and you'll see your backup icon come up on your desktop, and then at that point in time you can log back in your software and you have your backup completed. And we are still in the process of doing our connection. This 2 minutes always seems like a forever. And there it starts its download of the database or the configuration. Now I am complete. I'm talking to the panel. I'm getting my events, And just another quick test that you can do is to go to Door Open Manuals, open momentarily all of your doors, hit apply. You'll hear your relays click. It'll give you the notification that it succeeded, and you will get your events showing you that the doors are open. So with that, you will have a second verification that you are talking to your panel. This particular section will talk about adding a serial connection. We'll select serial. We have to know what COM port our MD14U is connected to, and we'll have to know our speed. In my particular case, we know that the speed is 57600. I have dip switch 1 and 2 in the up position, so now we need to go find out what COM port my MD14U is connected to. To find this, we need to go to our Windows Start button. There's a number of different ways you can get here, but you want to go to right click on your computer, go to Properties, go to your Device Manager, and we want to go to Ports. You'll see that I'm connected to COM port 6. Change this to COM port 6, tell it OK. Now you will see that my status is OK. It's my serial connection, and I always do want to give it a title so I'll know what it is. Tell it OK. Once I have created my network, then I need to find my panel as we did with the TCP/IP. So we will go to Table View, Find Panels, click on Find Panels, and at times it is more difficult to find a panel on a serial connection, or may take just a little longer than it does on a TCP/IP. It just kind of depends. So what we'll do is we'll let it run here for about 15 seconds searching for the panel. One way that you can always do a verification on your panel, whether it is software is talking to it and requesting, is if you look at the bottom right hand side of your panel, you'll see a red and green transmit receive light. The green receive should be blinking about once every 7 seconds if the software is getting to the panel and doing its request. You'll see that flash. Once we have found our panels, we put a check mark next to the panel itself. We do an add panel, and as it did with the TCP/IP, we are going to sit here and we're going to initialize. This is connecting to the panel itself, and it will take approximately 60 seconds for this to take place. This is David again. This is a continuation of finding networks and panels. One of the problems that we come across in our finding the panels is that we will go out, you will create a network. It's very easy to go out on the network and find the MAC address, but finding the panels can be difficult at times. So some of the things that we do when we are having a difficult time in finding a panel are, number one, we will change the serial speed. You should be set up most often at a 9600 on your serial speed, but occasionally you will find that you can't find the panel. You want to double check your dip switches to make sure 1 and 2 are down in that case, or in my case with 57.6, 1 and 2 are up. You want to make certain that your serial speed on the panel is the same set up in your software. That's one of the key components that we find. The second component that we find is if we go in and we start troubleshooting on this and we do an IP config, we will find often that people have forgotten to double check and make sure that their panel is exactly the same as the PC. So you always want to make sure your gateway is exactly the same. You always want to make sure your subnet is exactly the same, and you want to make sure your first 3 entries of your IP are exactly the same. And this is, you will not find a panel if those are not correct. Gateway type, always make sure that you're double checking to make sure that if it's an IP panel, it is the onboard. If it is a converter, the MDN32, that you select the MDN32. Another thing that you always can make sure of is you want to make sure that on your panel itself, on the bottom right hand side, you have an RS-232 to 485 switch. Most often we will need to be on the 485. So double check if you are using a network connection or if you are using a MD14U cable to connect. It always should be to the right on the RS-485. One of the other things that you can do is simply close the software and reopen the software, and at times this will help you find the panels. Another thing that we also do is we go to the task manager, we go to services, we will stop the Axtrax server and leave it stopped. Then we'll go down to the SQL server, Veritrax, which is the SQL that our software is installed on. We will stop and start it, and then we will come back up to the Axtrax server and restart it. One of the things that I didn't mention before that, you should close out your software, and so then you'll reopen it. With all of those troubleshooting aids, you should be able to find your panel.